Chapter 105 of Shrimadbhagavatam, Nabhaka. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nabhaka was a great king in the line of the Ikshwakus, and his son was Nabhaka. This young man was so devoted to learning that he spent most of his time with his guru. So much so, when the time came for the partitioning of their father's wealth, his brothers forgot all about the existence of Nabhaka and divided it all among themselves. Nabhaka came back from the abode of his guru and went to his brothers. He asked them, "Which is my share of my father's wealth?" They said, "Actually, we forgot all about you since you were away so long. Now it is too late to divide it all over again. But father is still unclaimed. We therefore allot our father to you as your share. Take him with you and take good care of him." Nabhaka went to his father and related to him about the words spoken by his brothers. The father said, "My son, they have become avaricious and they have deceived you. I am not like wealth, which will help you to make a living. Still, since it has happened like this, I will think up something to help you." The old man pondered for a while and then said, "I know how to help you to make a living. I know a method by which you can acquire wealth. Here, nearby, the Angirasas are performing yagnas by name Abhiplava and Prushtya. These have to be concluded 6 days after the commencement. Now, these Angirasas, though they are learned and wise, will not be able to remember the vital mantra without which the yagna cannot be completed. You stay in the spot and repeat these 2 mantras which I will teach you. Since they will attain the heavens because of these yagnas being completed successfully, they will in gratitude give you all the valuable things which will be left over in the yagnashala. With that wealth you can live in great comfort." Nabhaka did as he was told, and as the old father had predicted, the Angirasas gave him the wealth which was left in the yagnashala. When he was collecting all that was given to him, Nabhaka saw a dark man coming towards him from the northern direction. He came near and said, "All this belongs to me. You have no right over it." Nabhaka told him the story of how the Angirasas had given it all to him as a token of their appreciation and gratitude, but it was of no avail. So young Nabhaka said, "This has to be decided by a third person." "So be it," said the dark stranger, who was Rudra. "Go to your father and tell him what has happened. I will abide by what he says." Nabhaka heard the story and said, "My son, long ago during the yagna performed by Daksha, the rishis announced that the wealth left in the yagna bhumi always belonged to Rudra. It is Rudra who has come to claim it. He was every right over it, and again he is a deva. We cannot dispute his claim." Nabhaka, the young man, went back to Rudra and said, "My father says that the wealth is entirely yours and that I have no claim on it. Please forgive me for my ignorance of your true self and bless me who has fallen at your feet." Rudra was immensely pleased with the behavior of the young prince and said, "You are honest and straightforward. You also know how to respect one who is older than you. I am pleased with you. I will teach you the Brahma Vidya, and also as a reward for your righteousness, I will make a gift of this wealth to you." Nabhaka became one of the great seers of his time. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Chapter 106 of Shrimadbhagavatam, Ambarisha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nabhaka's son was Ambarisha, who was lord of the entire earth and possessed immense wealth. But he was a wise man. He knew that the things of the world are all transient and that they try and ensnare man's wisdom. He therefore considered it all as a passing pageant which occurs in a dream. He lived as a king. He enjoyed all his wealth and the glory of kingship, but with the knowledge that it was not a lasting thing. He was not involved with the worldly things, because he was the son like his father. His mind was steeped in Brahma Vidya. He had great devotion to Narayana, which made it easier for him to treat the entire world and its charms like a clod of mud. He was a Bhagavata in the true sense of the word. His mind was always lost in the feet of Narayana. His words were only words of praise of the Lord. His hands were ever engaged in doing menial service in the temple of the Lord. His ears were eager to listen to the stories of the Lord, and his eyes were happy only when they looked at the image of the Lord in the temples. His feet, he felt, were blessed only when they went on a pilgrimage to holy spots. This king who was a Narayana Bhakta, ruled the earth, and he ruled it well. Vashishta and Asita and Gautama helped him to perform the Ashwamedha on the banks of the Saraswati. Ambarisha lived in the world of men without any bondage, without any attachment. Narayana was so pleased with him that he gave his personal weapon Sudarshana Chakra to the king. This protected the king and his country. And so time went on. Once the king heard about the sanctity of the Vrita by name Dwadashi Vrita. He and his wife therefore observed the Vrita for a whole year. At the termination of the Vrita, which was observed during the month of Kartika, the king fasted for 3 days. He then went to the grove by name Madhuvana and worshipped the Lord. After giving away gifts of gold and cows to Brahmins, he came back to his palace and sat down to break the fast with his wife by his side. At that moment there appeared before him the sage Durvasa. The king got up in a hurry and placed a noble seat for the rishi. He honored him with Argya, Padya and Achamaniya. The king then prostrated before the great man and requested him to honor him by taking his food in his house. Durvasa was very pleased with the humility of the king and said, "Certainly I will accept your hospitality. I will first go to the river to perform my morning oblations and come back." Durvasa entered the river and was having his bath, all the while reciting the mantra, the sutra by name Aghamarshana. In the meantime, the king was in a difficult position. Dwadashi was fast drawing to a close. Only a few moments were left, and it was imperative that he should do Parana, having his food before Dwadashi ended in order to make his Vrita successful. Have his food before Dwadashi in order to make his Vrita successful. It was not only essential that he should eat, but it was sin if after preparing the Vrita a man did not eat during Dwadashi. He asked the advice of the learned Brahmins, and they said that a few drops of water purified with tulasi leaves would avert the sin. Accordingly, the king wetted his lips with a few drops of this water, which is said to be as pure as Ganga, and waited for the coming of the rishi. Durvasa came back. He was received humbly by the king, but the rishi saw with his mind's eye what had happened. He was highly insulted that the host, a king, should have ignored an honored guest to the extent of beginning the Parana without his guest. His body was trembling with anger and his eyes were spitting fire. He said, "You are drunk with power and wealth. You are an arrogant man who does not know how to honor a guest. I will teach you what it is to insult me. You will be punished for this." He pulled out a lock from his matted hair and created a being named Kritya. This being held a sword in his hand and he rushed towards the king. Ambirasa stood unmoved. Ambi stood unmoved. Ambarisha stood unmoved. Before anything could happen, Sudarshana Chakra came on the scene and burnt the newborn, newly created being to ashes. Durvasa was amazed at this. Sudarshana did not stop there. It rushed towards Durvasa and he tried to escape from its fury by running away. He ran from the spot and the chakra followed him. He ran into the forest and it pursued him like a forest fire. He entered a cave in the mountain Meru and he found the chakra there. He ran to the heavens and to the abode of Indra. The chakra pursued him. He went to Brahma, the creator of the universe, and said, help me, protect me from the weapon of Narayana. Brahma said, I am a servant of the Lord and I am helpless. I will not intervene between you and the weapon of Narayana. Durvasa went to Mahadeva and asked him to help him. Mahadeva asked him to go to Narayana himself and fall at his feet. Durvasa went to Vaikunta, the dwelling place of the Lord. He was there and so was Lakshmi, his consort. The Rishi rushed to him, fell at his feet and said, please protect me. Ask this chakra of yours to leave me. I am not able to withstand the fire emanating from your Sudarshana. I am being burnt and you are the only savior. How did it happen? Asked the Lord. How is it my chakra is pursuing you like this? Tell me. With a shamed look and with faltering words, Durvasa related the entire incident and said, I have offended your bhakta and your chakra is trying to punish me for it. Please help me. There is nothing that is impossible for the Lord of Lords. I am repentant about my behavior. Please save me. Narayana smiled and said, my dear Durvasa, can you not see that I am also just as helpless as Brahma or Rudra? Evidently, you do not know about me. I am not a free person. I may be able to do anything I like. But first and foremost, I belong to my bhaktas. All that is mine belongs to them. They have renounced everything and have chosen me as their sole companion. They have abandoned everything for my sake. Wife, home, child and kinsmen, their very lives. They have no thought of this world or the next. Heaven holds no charm for them. All they want is my grace. In return, I have sworn that I will never abandon them. The foremost thought in my mind is the bhakti they have for me. They have conquered me with their love and I am powerless against their love. I have no will of my own. Their sorrow is my sorrow and their happiness is mine. I am famed by the name Bhakta Paradina. I am not as fond of myself or even my Devi Lakshmi as I am of my bhaktas. When such is the case, how can I treat them casually? Any insult offered to my bhakta is considered as an insult to me, just as good women make slaves of their husbands by the extreme love they have for them. Even so, my bhaktas have made me their slave. As for you, you are also my bhakta. But I cannot ask this chakra to move away from the course it has chosen. I will tell you what you can do to save yourself. There is only one way and only one way out for you. Go back to the earth. Fall at the feet of the bhakta whom you have offended. Perhaps Sudarshana will listen to the entreaties of Ambarisha, the son of Nabhaka. He may withdraw it for your sake and you may be saved. With a crestfallen look, Durvasa arrived at the palace doors of Ambarisha. He went to the king and falling at his feet, he caught them in his two hands. Ambarisha was greatly embarrassed and he at once began to offer prayers to Sudarshana, the chakra of the Lord. Sudarshana, I salute you. You are Agni, Surya, Chandra, and the stars. You pervade the universe. You are the favorite weapon of Narayana, who is the ocean of mercy. You are so great that all the astras are powerless against your glory. I fall at your feet and ask you to forgive this Brahman. You destroy evil and evildoers. Please do not show your anger against a poor and powerless Brahmin. Pleased with his prayers, Sudarshana became cool and Durvasa was no longer pursued by the dread weapon. The chastened Rishi then spoke to the king. He said, "You are a very noble man. You are gentle even with me who insulted you for no reason at all. I have realized the greatness of the devotees of Narayana. For those who have captivated the Lord with their devotion, nothing is impossible. For those who have captivated the Lord with their devotion, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. By holding his image in your minds forever, men like you become so pure and holy that they are as sacred as the river Ganga. I have been treated very kindly by you. You have forgotten the insulting words I hurled at you, and you have saved my life." The king made him feel less embarrassed because it was quite a humiliating experience for a great rishi like Durvasa to fall at the feet of a king who, he had thought, had not paid him enough respect. Somehow, the moment passed, the moment which was painful to both of them. The time which Durvasa took to go to the three lokas and come back to Ambarisha was 1 year. During that entire year, the king had not eaten a morsel of food. Durvasa was horrified at the enormity of the consequences of his rashness, and he beseeched the king to have his food. The guest had to be honored first, according to the king. So, with a pleased mind and with happiness in his heart, the rishi accepted the atithya of the king Ambarisha. Both of them partook of the good food. The king, after the rishi had been satisfied, Durvasa said, "I have been blessed by my contact with you, a Bhakta of Narayana. The world will ever remember this incident in my life and yours." He left the presence of the king and went away. As for the king, the incident had assumed the semblance of a dream. The coming of Durvasa, his anger, and later his repentance, following the wrath of the Chakra, were all amazing happenings, and while he thought over them, Ambarisha told himself, "It is all the Leela of the Lord. Who can fathom the purpose behind all this?" Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 107 of Shrimadbhagavatam, Kakutstha and others. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Puranjaya was one of the descendants of Ikshvaku. He was later known as Indravahana. There was war in the heavens between the Devas and the Asuras, and, as happened often, Indra asked one of the kings on the earth to help him. The king was Puranjaya of the Surya Vamsha. Puranjaya said, "I will fight for you on one condition. You should be the one to carry me during the fight. You must be my Vahana." Indra did not like it at all, since he thought it was below his dignity, the dignity of the Lord of the heavens, to be the Vahana for a mere mortal. Narayana, however, knowing what was passing in his mind, told him that he should agree to it, since Puranjaya was their only hope of winning the war. According to the advice of the Lord, Indra agreed to become the Vahana for the king. Indra took the form of a bull, and Puranjaya sat on the hump on the back of the bull. He was a great warrior, and he had the grace of Narayana to give him victory over the Asuras, whom he drove with his sharp arrows to the nether world. He fought gloriously, and after the Asuras had abandoned their city, the king took all their wealth and gave it to Indra. This king Puranjaya was famed in later days as Indravahana, and a more popular name was Kukatstha. Kukatstha. All the kings of the race who came after him were called Kakutsthas. This name was frequently used for Rama, the son of Dasharatha. Yuvanashva was a king who was born in the line of Ikshvaku. He had no children. Disgusted with his life, he went to the forest accompanied by his wives, who were 100 in number. The rishis in the forest took pity on the king and offered to perform a yagna to propitiate Indra. When the yagna was concluded, they filled a pot with water and they invoked the gods to bless the water. The water was then placed in a holy spot inside the Yagnashala. It was meant for the wives of the king. In the middle of the night, Yuvanashva got up. He was feeling extremely thirsty. He entered the Yagnashala and found that everyone was asleep. He knew nothing about the special qualities in the water which was in the pot right in front of him. He drank up the water and went back to sleep. In the morning, when the rishis got up and found the pot empty, they asked everyone, "Who has drunk this water?" The king told them that he had drunk it during the night since he was very thirsty. No one knew what to do. They did not know what was going to happen. A few months passed and the right flank of the king had become big with child. It had to be torn apart and a son was born. The child, as soon as it was born, cried lustily with hunger. Indra, who had been the god propitiated for the sake of the child for Yuvanashva, rushed to the spot. He placed his right forefinger inside the mouth of the child. The child drank the amrita which flowed out of Indra's finger. As for Yuvanashva, he did not die because of the power of the rishis. He later performed tapas and attained salvation. The child was named Mandhatri and became one of the great monarchs who ruled the earth. Men in later times called him the ornament of Krita Yuga. Satyavrata was a later king in the line. His son was Trishanku. Trishanku was the king who wanted to reach the heavens with a human body. Vashishta and his sons refused to perform a yagna to grant him this strange desire and cursed him to become a Chandala. Vishwamitra, the generous-hearted rishi, agreed to perform a yagna to send him to the heavens. He did perform the yagna and the king was raised to the heavens. The gods, led by Indra, resented this intrusion of an earthly person who was Chandala by his looks. They threw him down. Vishwamitra, hearing his piteous cry, grew extremely wrathful. He stopped him in mid-air and created a new heaven solely for the sake of Trishanku. Before he could create a new Brahma, the Devas came and pacified him. Trishanku lives forever in the special heaven created for him by Vishwamitra. Trishanku's son was Harishchandra. He had no sons and he prayed to Varuna, the lord of the oceans. He said, "All I want to have is a son. This is for the purpose of saving myself from the hell by name Put. When a son is born to me, I will perform a yagna with my son as the offering and give him to you." In course of time, a son was born to the king. The child was named Rohita. Varuna came to Harishchandra and said, "You promised to perform a yagna with this child as the offering." The king said, "A newborn child is unclean. It is only after 10 days that it becomes clean. I will give him to you after that." 10 days later, Varuna came to claim his due. The king then said, "A yagna pashu has to have teeth, and so please wait till he cuts his teeth." When Varuna came again, the king came up with the excuse that the milk teeth should fall, and then later that they should grow again. And so it went on. The king, attached inordinately to his son, began to think up many excuses. "Let my son wear armor. A Kshatriya is pure only when he is armed. Rohita, in the meanwhile, came to know all about what was to happen to him. He wanted to escape his doom by running away to the forest with a bow in his hand. The king, in his turn, was afflicted by the dread disease, dropsy, which Varuna caused as a punishment to the untruthful king. Hearing about it, Rohita started to go home to save his father. Indra stopped him. He told that young prince that he should go and visit all the holy rivers. 1 year passed, and again it happened, and yet again. 5 years passed, and finally Rohita decided to go back to his kingdom and to his father. On the way, he met a Brahmin who had 3 sons and bought one of them as an offering for Varuna. His name was Sunashepa. Harishchandra, with the affliction still tormenting him, performed the yaga by name Naramedha, where the sacrifice is a human being and not an animal. Vishwamitra, who was the Hota, taught the incantation by name Varuna Japa to the young boy Sunashepa, which pleased the god immensely. Indra was pleased with the yaga and granted a golden chariot to Harishchandra. Varuna was pleased with the youngster Sunashepa, and he was allowed to leave. Vishwamitra adopted him as his son, and the yajna came to a satisfactory conclusion. The gods were pleased, and Harishchandra did not lose his son. He was also cured of the disease which had been troubling him for years. Vishwamitra, who had been very fond of Trishanku, took it upon himself to teach the Brahma Vidya to Harishchandra. One of the descendants of this line was the king Katvanga. He was a great warrior. Once, when the Devas, as usual, were harassed by the Asuras, they asked this king from the earth to help them. Katvanga went and assisted Indra in subduing the Asuras. The Devas were very pleased with him and asked him to ask any boon he wished. He said, "Please tell me how many more years I have left out of my lifetime." The Devas looked at each other and finally, with a lot of hesitation, said, "It is a Deva Rahasya, but we will tell you, since we promise to grant you a boon. You have just 1 muhurta left." A muhurta is roughly 20 minutes. Katvanga was not unhappy. He rushed to the earth and sat down in meditation. He contemplated on the form of the Lord. He spoke words of supplication. He said, "Nothing is dear to me in this world. I have never been an adharmi at any time in my life. I have thought of you, my Lord, and of no one else. The Devas tempted me with Swarga, but I was not enamored of it and the joys it promises. The Devas themselves do not know the form of you, my Lord, caught as they are in the web of Maya. I take refuge in the lotus feet of you, Narayana, abandoning the world of illusion which is created by the mind and the senses." So saying, King Katvanga abandoned everything and became one with the Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Pranamastu. Chapter 108 of Shrimadbhagavatam, Sagara and his sons. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In the line of Ikshvaku was born a king by name Bahuka. When his land had been taken by force by his enemies, Bahuka went to the forest, and with him went his wife. The king died when he was in the forest. When he died, his grief-stricken wife was about to enter the fire which was kindled on his funeral fire. But she was stopped from doing so by the rishis, since she was with child. The other wives of the king did not like this news at all. They did not like her since she had the good fortune which had been denied to them. They did not like her to be the mother of the future king. Therefore, they mixed poison with the food she was wont to eat, and with great affection fed her with it. But, contrary to their expectations, nothing happened either to the mother or to the unborn child. The child, when it was born, was covered by the poison which his mother had swallowed, and so the rishis called him Sagara. Sagara. Sagara became a famous king and he later became the emperor. He wanted to perform the yaga by name Ashwamedha. The horse meant for the sacrifice had been sent out. Indra, as was his usual custom, stole the horse. The king asked his sons, 60,000 in number, to go in search of the horse and to bring it back. The sons of the king were all valiant, but they were equally arrogant. They set out in search of the horse. They searched all over the world and could not find the horse. They then dug the earth with their immensely powerful arms and entered the nether world. When they proceeded in the northeasterly direction, they found a cave. Inside the cave was sitting a rishi in samadhi, and by the side of the rishi they found their horse grazing happily. "Look at this thief!" exclaimed the proud princess. "Having stolen our horse, he is sitting with his eyes closed as though he knows nothing. Let us kill him." So saying, the 60,000 stalwarts grasped their weapons in their hands and rushed towards the rishi. It was Kapila who was in the cave. He opened his eyes. His angry glance lighted on them, and the sons of Sagara were turned to a heap of ashes. Perhaps it is wrong to say that the anger of Kapila burned them. Kapila was Sattva Guna, which had taken a form for the good of mankind, and it is not possible for Tamoguna to be found in him. Tamoguna is essentially earthly, and the rishis are so rich spiritually. And again, it was this Kapila who taught man who was floundering in the morass called samsara how to cross it easily. It is with the help of this raft that man is able to make this fearful journey across the ocean. Such a personage can have neither friend nor foe. How then were the Sagaraputras killed? They died because they had insulted a great man, and Indra had robbed them of their power of thinking. Sagara had two wives. The mother of these unfortunate 60,000 was Sumati. The other wife was Keshini. She had a son by name Asamanja. Asamanja's son was Amshuman, and he was greatly devoted to his grandfather. Asamanja was a strange being. He had been a yogi in his previous birth. Unfortunately, he became involved in Sangha attachment. As a result of this, he was born as the son of a king. He was, however, able to remember his previous birth. In the present birth, he protected himself from bondage, Banda, by pretending to be a cruel man. Even as a young man, his many acts appeared to be inhuman. He displeased everyone around him and thus escaped the powerful bondage called affection. He would frighten the citizens by catching hold of young children and throwing them into the river Sarayu and clapping his hands as though in glee. His behavior was intolerable. His atrocities were so many that the people complained to the king that he had to be punished. According to the law of the land, Asamanja was banished from the country. Just before leaving the forest, he restored all the children to life, and before the amazed people could say anything, he walked away, and in the forest, Asamanja performed tapas and attained moksha. The king was unhappy that he had lost a good son, and so he showered all his love on Amshuman, the only remnant of the line of Ikshvaku. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.